Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Natea and this is Nesthetics, where I talk about topics that I care about and you should care about too if you choose. June is National Soul Food Month and today we are breaking down the Boondocks Season 1, Episode 10, titled The Itis. The Boondocks is an American animated adult comedy sitcom that aired in 2005. This is the second Boondocks episode I am breaking down. The first episode I broke down was Return of the King back in January for MLK Day. That video and this video are a part of my channel's throwback series where I break down and analyze BIPOC television shows, films, and events from the past to explain the importance and messages in them. I will link the playlist to previous throwback series videos above in the icon and also in the description box if you want to check them out after this video. So first, before we break down the episode, I want to briefly explain what soul food is. So soul food are meals that stem from slavery. Enslaved Africans were given food rations, which are fixed allowances of food. These food rations that enslaved Africans received were leftovers, scraps, and undesirable cuts of meats. Therefore, lots of the food was low quality and low in nutritional value. However, Black folks still made food out of what they had and they made it taste good. That's why every time I'm in the kitchen, you in the kitchen, in the goddamn refrigerator, eating up all the food, all the chicken, all the pig feet, all the collard greens, all the hog maws.
Every time I come in the kitchen, you in the kitchen. In the goddamn refrigerator, eating up all the food, all the chicken, all the pig feet, all the collard green, all the hog maws.
Man, R.I.P. John Witherspoon. But for real though, since enslaved Africans were given the less desirable meats, that's why soul food includes, chitlins that folks love to eat with hot sauce, pig feet, ham hocks. These are some of the examples of soul food. There are a lot of other foods included in soul food meals, but that's another video for another time. So soul food has strong African roots and ties to Black culture. It is now considered comfort food, but it was born out of struggle and survival. You can find soul food restaurants all over the US, but soul food is mostly prepared and eaten in the southern region of the United States, and you can find many soul food restaurants down south. I'm currently watching this 4-part docuseries on Netflix called High on the Hog that I highly recommend. It traces the roots of African American food from Africa to Texas, and I may or may not end up releasing a video this month giving my commentary on that series, but we'll see. But I highly recommend that as well if you are interested in soul food and African American cuisine. So now let's get into breaking down the episode of the Boondocks titled The Itis. The episode starts off with Granddad, voiced by John Witherspoon, cooking bacon, fried chicken, and fried fish in his kitchen. One of his grandsons, Huey, comes into the kitchen, looks into one of the pots cooking on the stove, and asks Granddad, yo, you cooked the broccoli I got at the store with the ham? And Granddad yeah, it's pork flavored broccoli. And Huey is upset about this because the broccoli is basically pork now and has lost all of its nutritional value. In the next scene, Granddad, Riley, Huey, the Dubois family, and a white business owner named Ed are at the table eating Granddad's meal he calls Granddad's Pork Swine Delight, which consists of 2 pig knuckles glazed in honey, pig tongue marinated in butter for 2 days, chitlins, aka pig intestines soaked in hot sauce, drizzled in mayonnaise, and 3 pounds of cheddar cheese. Now, y'all, that meal might have been good, but we all know that is the most unhealthy thing you could ever eat. but this is an example of a soul food meal. But let's get back into breaking down the episode. So Granddad basically used the undesirable parts of the pig and turned them into a delicious meal. And one of the little girl, the daughter in the Dubois family, Jasmine Dubois, she says that she's sleepy after eating the meal that Granddad made. And Granddad explains, oh, it's just the itis, which he defines as when you get sleepy after you've had a big meal. And then after she says that, everybody at the table ends up getting drowsy as well, except for Huey, because he ends up not eating the soul food meal. Now, us black folks know all about the itis, especially around holidays. We wait all day for the Thanksgiving meal to get done. Then we eat our big meal and get that itis and then go to sleep. Now, if you notice, we only get the itis when we eat large meals of unhealthy foods or fattening foods. So just think about the feeling that you get after you eat a burger and fries or any fast food restaurant. You feel sluggish afterwards. That food does not give you energy at all. But anyways, so Ed, the white business owner at the table, he throws out the idea that he and Granddad should work together to open his own soul food restaurant. So Granddad continues to practice his soul food cooking at home, leading up to the opening of his restaurants with his grandsons Huey and Riley as taste testers. Granddad creates the Luther, which is a full-pound burger covered in cheese with grilled onion, 5 strips of bacon, sandwiched between 2 Krispy Kreme donuts. And if this burger sounds familiar, that's because it's a real thing. So, but I don't recommend anybody go eat this burger because it's probably very, very, very unhealthy and not good for you. But Riley, one of his grandsons, tastes the burger while Huey is looking at the menu. And this menu, which is going to be the menu at Granddad's new restaurant, it includes so many more unhealthy meals, such as sausage and waffle and fried chicken breakfast lasagna, bacon wrapped chitlins, stuffed catfish. And Huey was like, this food will cause death. Like, you can't serve this to people in the public. And Granddad basically just called him bougie for not wanting to eat this kind of food. He was like, oh, you're too good to eat soul food. And I'll talk more a little bit about that later in my analysis, my thoughts about that. But while this conversation is happening, Riley is still eating the burger, and he says this is what crack must feel like. And then he passes out with drool dripping down his face. So the Huey and Granddad trying to wake him up, and Riley finally wakes up for a minute and says the burger was the best thing ever. And then he passes back out again. So Granddad is just happy that Riley liked the burger. And in the next scene, we see that Granddad ends up opening his soul food restaurant called the Itis, with the Luther burger being the signature meal at this restaurant. But the grand opening was a whole red carpet event with cameras and everything. When you get to the door, you're asked how long of a nap you want to take after your meal because they have beds for you to sleep in after you eat. And Huey, he continues to peep that the restaurant was a bad idea. So he's looking for ways to shut this place down. He's going around the restaurant with this book called How to Eat to Live by Elijah Muhammad, who was the previous leader of the Nation of Islam and a mentor to Malcolm X. But Huey is just like recognizing all the bad things that are happening now that this restaurant is open. He's noticing how the food is deadly, and all of these people are just passed out on the beds in the restaurant, just looking toe up from the floor up. People were getting addicted to the food. It was becoming harder for people to wake up on time from their naps after eating. People were losing their jobs. They were falling out in the streets in the nearby park. Crime was increasing. And all of this low vibrational stuff is happening after everybody is eating this low vibrational food, which I'll get into more later. So the restaurant was still getting a lot of press and people were lining up for the food. I do like and I peep how it was mostly, if not all, white people who were customers at the restaurant and like not black people. I peeped how they did that in this episode. But these white folks became addicted to the food. They were gaining weight and coming in after hours begging for a Luther burger, saying they do anything for one. Specifically, this woman, Janet, was addicted to the food, and I want y'all to keep her name in the back of y'all minds because I'm going to bring her back up later. But basically, this food was like drugs to them. They were even becoming depressed from eating this food. They had to modify the beds at the restaurant so that it would literally push people out the bed and wake them up from their naps. Things were just terrible. So Huey, he's still trying to shut this place down. And he's discouraging people from eating there. He's telling them everything on the menu will kill them. And Granddad overhears this, and he's upset, and he thinks Huey is trying to sabotage his business. So they have a conversation in the back, and I'm going to insert that clip here.
Fine. You want to keep playing around? Now you can wash the dishes.
Granddad, look what you've done to this community.
It's not that bad.
Not that bad. This place used to sit between a coffee shop and a day spa. Now there's a liquor store and a damn Foot Locker. This food is destructive.
This food is your culture.
Then the culture is destructive.
He's right, Senor Freeman. All African American slaves had to eat was the parts of the pigs the slave masters wouldn't eat. But that was a survival technique, Gonse. They didn't really have a choice. I don't think people are supposed to eat this stuff, or at least not so much. What? I can't take an Afro-American studies class at the community college?
Well, nobody asked you, Chico.
After that conversation, the restaurant ends up getting shut down because the same woman who was depressed and begging for the Luther burger earlier, the woman named Janet, she ends up suing the restaurant. She went on national television telling her story of how soul food ruined her life. Then she ended up getting 2 liposuction surgeries to lose all the weight she gained. She sued the restaurant and asked for $500,000 for medical bills and $4 million for emotional damages. Now, if it's one thing white folks gonna do, they gonna sue, okay? That's one thing white folks know how to do. They gonna get that coin for their emotional damages and all of that. That's what white folks gonna do for real. So Janet asked for one last Luther burger and she ends up having a heart attack in the restaurant while eating it, which is a shame. And at the end of the episode, they all gather for Sunday dinner again, but this time they're eating healthier foods because they learned their lesson and they decide to make and eat soul food on a less regular basis. So now I want to get into my analysis of the episode. Overall, I love this episode. It's both hilarious and educational. The messages that I took away from this episode are that, one, the culture is killing us. Towards the end of the episode, when Granddad said to Huey, like, this is your culture, then Huey says, well, the culture is destructive. And I 100% agree with that. Many things a part of African American culture, in my opinion, are destructive to our community. Granddad also basically called Huey bougie earlier for not wanting to eat soul food, saying he was acting like he was too good to eat it. This sounds very similar to me to how people say you're acting white if you don't do things that are aligned with black culture, and I don't like that. It makes black people feel ashamed for being different and wanting to step outside the box. Like, we don't always have to do things aligned with our culture, especially if those things are destructive. More black people should be able to be like Huey, wanting to deny soul food and eat healthier because they know what it does to the community. And I feel like we shouldn't step away from our culture, but like, if something is destructive, then we should step away from it. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a part of our culture. If it's destructive, we need to make changes to it, in my opinion. So overall, the character Huey is really a teacher in this entire series. He had the How to Eat to Live book and went around in the restaurant like telling people about the food they were eating or making. And even though like that book, it's an actual book, and I've never read it before, but it's an actual book written by Elijah Muhammad, who was the previous Nation of Islam leader. And, you know, the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad, they have controversy behind their names. But I do like how this episode mentioned this book in this episode, because what you eat does determine how you live. And we see that in this episode. It determines how long you live as well. The lady at the end, Janet, I don't know if she ended up dying, but she did have that heart attack at the end. But yeah, like this food can literally kill you. So soul food is delicious, and it's wonderful knowing the history behind it, knowing that our ancestors made something good out of the little that they were giving. However, we are no longer enslaved. Some of us in the community may be enslaved mentally, but we are no longer enslaved physically. Therefore, we don't have to continue to eat the less desirable parts of meats, because that's not all we have access to anymore. Back in the day, that's all they had access to. So they did what they had to do with what they had. But today, that's not the case. I'm not saying that we shouldn't eat or cook soul food at all, but definitely don't eat it too much. Not even often, I would say, because you see what it did to these people in this episode. They became unhealthy. They became overweight. They became sluggish, depressed, and addicted to the food. This food basically became a drug to them. It became a drug to them. And I feel like that shows how when food is low vibrational, you know, just like McDonald's and fast food, any junk food, it's more addictive. And it's harder for you to stop eating it once you start eating it consistently. It's hard to get out of it. It's like the food traps you in a way. So these unhealthy food options are low-key drugs. And I like how this episode really showed that symbolism, because we saw how people were like begging for the food after hours, and they were in the streets and doing crime and things like that. They were doing whatever they needed to do in order to get this food. They were addicted to it that bad. And I don't think it's just soul food. I think it's just, you know, unhealthy eating habits and unhealthy foods in general. And many of the foods that we eat make us feel sluggish, and they lead to chronic diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure. In part, this is not completely in our control, because many of our communities are segregated and we don't have access to healthy food options compared to other communities. Instead, we have fast food restaurants and liquor stores in our communities instead of grocery stores with healthy food options, which are usually out of the way from our homes and our neighborhoods. So in part, it's not entirely our fault that we don't have access to healthy food options as much as other groups in other neighborhoods, but at some point we do have to acknowledge and take charge of that ourselves, because nobody is coming to save our neighborhoods to put grocery stores in it. You know, there's a long process in order to get that done. So in the meantime, we need to take control of our own lives and figure out ways to get healthy foods and eat healthier in the cheapest way possible if we can, because I know everyone can't afford healthy food. It's not cheap. Whole Foods, if you go to Whole Foods, it ain't cheap. So at some point we have to try to come up with our own solutions for our communities, because we can't just continue to eat the same foods, the same unhealthy foods, and just continue to deal with it because our communities don't have the healthy food options that we need. So at some point, I believe that we need to take charge of our own destiny, because clearly white folks, they don't care about our communities, okay? They don't care. And I have seen like a lot of Black communities, at least in Milwaukee, starting to do more gardening. There is this one organization called Groundwork Milwaukee that grows their own food and tries to get the community involved and things like that. I've seen a lot of community refrigerators in different communities. So I do like how some communities are coming together. So if you are looking for more healthy food options and you are in a place where you don't have access to healthy foods, definitely look out for those kind of community resources. To continue my analysis, I think that Black Americans have a good reputation of taking something that was supposed to limit us and using it for good, and using it for something positive and reclaiming it. For example, we did this with the N-word, and we do it with soul food. And honestly, that is commendable for us Black Americans, because it shows our resilience. It shows how we do not let our oppressors tear us down. It shows how creative we are as a people. It shows that whatever is thrown at us, we're able to overcome it. But even though it is commendable, I think we don't always need to reclaim something or embrace it. Yes, I use the N-word on a regular basis, but there is no way we should have allowed ourselves to reclaim that word. It is powerful in a sense, but at the same time, part of me feels like we should have not reclaimed that word ever. And I more recently thought about this because I met this guy who is a grad student at Howard in the Africana Studies department, and he's from Nairobi, Kenya. And we were talking about the differences in culture and how he has had to adjust to African American culture. And we started talking about the N-word, and he explained to me how that word back in Kenya is not acceptable at all. Not from Black folks, not from white folks, not from anyone. Like, your elders will whoop you if you use that word. But he also said in Kenya, like, there is no such thing as reclaiming the word. But also their country has been free for less time than Black folks in America. So, all of those ancestors, all the elders, they're still living. So he chooses not to use the word because of where he's come from. But us Black Americans, I feel like we've become so acclimated to using the word, since it's so integrated in our culture and integrated in hip-hop and rap and the music that we listen to. And same thing with soul food. We are always trying to progress as a community, as a people, but we're steadily reclaiming things that aren't progressing us. Us embracing soul food and its origins is a good thing and wonderful thing, but eating it regularly to embrace its roots is killing us. Unhealthy eating habits, loading our foods with sugar and salt, is all killing us. Like, why can't we start to embrace healthier versions of soul food? I've seen vegan soul food recipes before. I don't know if I've seen any vegan soul food restaurants. I don't know if those exist. But why can't we turn soul food into something that will better our community, better the health of our community? If we want health equity in our communities, we need to eat healthier and promote more healthier eating, among other things. But this is one thing that does need to be done as well. And I'm not trying to take away from our culture, but the culture, like Huey said, is destructive and it's killing us. I believe there is a better way we can embrace soul food's history in our community while also making healthy choices for our body. Like, high key, we probably shouldn't even be eating pig intestines, which is what chillins is. Like, we probably should not even be eating that. Like, no way. Like, some parts of the meats I think do not need to be eaten, and pig intestines is one of them. I believe food is vibrational. Music is vibrational. Everything has energy. If we're eating the least desirable parts of the meats and least desirable foods, we're receiving the lowest vibrational energy from those foods. And that's why it's giving us, quote unquote, the itis. And that's why the energy around us is poor. You've heard the saying, you are what you eat. Therefore, if you're constantly eating low vibrational foods, you are going to constantly attract low vibrational energy. And I don't eat healthy all the time either. I'm not vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, none of that. I'm not on any type of diet. But I do consume less junk food, less meat, less fast food on a regular basis. I've just had a love-hate relationship with meat more recently. Sometimes I just can't eat it. Like it's for me, like eating too much meat, like I can't do it. But McDonald's, like I make sure I don't eat that more than once a month. Cause it tastes good and I feel good in the moment eating it, but I make sure I don't eat a lot of it and I eat it in moderation. Sometimes I want a Filet-O-Fish sandwich because I know it tastes good. Sometimes I want a cheeseburger from McDonald's, but I do not let myself eat that more than once a month, or try to do it like every other month. But I really try to control myself with that. And that's what I encourage you all to do, as well. As everyone has always said, eat everything in moderation. Limit yourself to junk food, fast food, unhealthy foods. Probably should only eat pig intestines like once a year if you're gonna eat it. Like, don't even eat that on a regular basis. Like, I don't think like eating pig intestines once a month is good for you either. But as you can see, like in the episode, the more low vibrational food they ate, the more low vibrational activities that occurred. For example, crime. People were jobless. People were homeless, hanging out in the park. People were depressed. And coincidentally, that sounds very similar to segregated Black communities with low resources and the things that occur. Higher crime rates, higher incarceration rates, high unemployment rates. More people are depressed and homeless. Like, food can't solely cause all of this. But as I'm analyzing this episode, I see the correlation between the food and the activities that began to occur in that neighborhood. And you can't ignore the low vibrational activities that began to occur as more people began to eat this food. So I think for me, as I analyze it, that's something that I peeped, that low vibrational food is or does contribute to low vibrational activities. And I also peeped how most, if not all, the customers at this restaurant were white. The restaurant was set in a suburban neighborhood, which transitioned to an urban neighborhood the longer the restaurant stayed there. I like how they didn't use a Black neighborhood to begin with and a Black customer base, because I personally believe if it was a majority Black customer base, the restaurant would have never closed down. Black people would have continued eating there. It would have remained open for business. Ain't no way Black people would have stopped coming to a soul food restaurant or sued them for causing them to gain weight or becoming emotional or depressed. But these white folks in this episode did not come to play. They sued this restaurant and they were like, yeah, I want half a meal. I want meal for emotional damages and all of that. They didn't come to play. I really think that they were smart. The creators of this episode, the writers and the creator of the series, was smart in using that, because I peeped that like the majority customer base was white. There wasn't really any Black customers. I feel like if it was based in a Black neighborhood, it wouldn't have had the same outcome. That's how I think it would have went down. But all in all, I really like this episode. If you want to watch the full episode, it is linked down in the description box. The full episode, a couple people have uploaded it on YouTube. And it's also on HBO Max if you want to watch it there. But you can watch it on YouTube for free. But yeah, thank y'all for watching or listening to my video today. I've been doing a lot more podcast style videos, but this is not a podcast, and I have no interest in starting a podcast. But yeah, thank y'all for listening to my video today. I hope y'all enjoyed it and learned something. And let me know your thoughts about this episode, soul food, and how the culture is low-key killing us. Let me know your thoughts, and I will see y'all in my next video. Peace.